Okay, we're live, right. Right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Central Otago District Council. It's our last meeting for that year. The first item I'd like to do is ask Councillor Allen for Kia.
Bear with me, this is one that I'm just learning. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa pounamu te moana. Hei horahi nā tātou e tēnei rā, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou kia tātou katoa, homie, huie, tai kie. And that means, may peace be widespread, may the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all this day, give love, receive love, let us show respect for each other, join, gather, unite.
Thank you.
Nice.
Apologies this morning from His Worship the Mayor. This is why I'm sitting here. Councillor McKinlay and Councillor Brown. Someone move that they Hamer, seconded Martin, all in favour?
Aye.
Carried, thank you. Next item is on page 5 of your agenda, which is, oh sorry, there is no public forum today, so don't be worried about that. But to confirm the minutes of the last council meeting, someone put changes to there. So the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of November, someone have to move that to confirm, please. Oh, Sally and Cheryl, all in favour? Yes, carried, thank you. Declarations of interest, just a reminder that you need to make sure you don't get yourself into bother. Everybody happy with what's there for their declarations, no changes? Cool. Right. Move on now to the first item on our agenda, which is private plan change 23. It's a small, slight delay while we just track down our staff member that's bringing that report to us. Thank Councillor Duncan for the chocolate, Councillor Patterson.
I did, I think. There was a thumbs up, thank you.
I'll be worried he's made some mention about expecting something from you.
No, he's very sharing.
Anyway, Anne?
Who'd run this one?
Calm down. Give them a second.
You do a news report, please, all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right, let's shoot ahead to item number 22.10.12 on page 295, the Mayor's report. The Mayor is not here, obviously, so I'll move that his report be received. Someone like to second that, please? Councillor Duncan, all those in favour? Against, carried, thank you. Yeah, good report from Tim, and I can't answer any questions on his behalf. What is you going to be in, or
It's on the way.
on the way? The government's report was going to page 298. Down there. And its report to oh, MC. We're back. Okay. Back to the agenda item number 22.10.2, the private plan change number 23, Fulton Hogan Park. Welcome, man. With your capital hands.
So council received an application from Portugal to undertake a plan change on what is currently the heartburn quarry on the road between and Nugget. It's quite a large area, it's 180 hectares. And what they're looking at is what the site they're looking forward to what it looks like post the extraction process being finished. So once the quarrying ends, what does that look like? So what they're proposing to do is a comprehensive marina style development with a combination of residential, business and industrial. The industrial is reflects what's currently there. There's a few activities there around, there's concrete batching plants and a few other things there. And the business area zone that they're proposing is specific to neighbourhood type activities, convenience retail and travel accommodation, so keeping it quite tight. There's approximately 81 hectares of low density. They've used our plan change 19 zonings and provisions, so they've walked those through, and they're proposing to make the plan change proposes to make some changes to the business zone rules and the industrial zones to accommodate some specific activities within that zone. Figure 1 in the report sort of outlines where those areas are going to go. So the decision for council today is around the process and whether or not we accept the plan change. It's not about the merits of the plan change, it's about whether or not it meets the test under the RMA. The grounds on which we can reject them are quite narrow, and they're outlined in the report. I'm of the opinion that there's no reason to reject this proposal. And in terms of the other decision of council is whether there's 3 options, which is whether our council proceeds with it. It can be, the Act provides for it to be processed as a resource consent, adopted as if it were a council initiated plan change, or agreed to it being notified as a private plan change. I've recommended the latter, that it be a private plan change, unlikely to be successful through a resource consent process given the current zoning and activities there. And it's quite a comprehensive proposal, and council hasn't considered development in that area, so possibly not appropriate for council to put this one in process as its own plan change. So maybe that's a really question.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody? As Anne has said, probably for the benefit of their accounts, Sarah's not here. It's pretty much a procedural thing at the end of the day. And said everything's in order to go through that process of private plan change. No grounds that been identified for which we can say no. So, yeah.
On the first page of the report, it says that 0.09 hectares of land will be medium density.
Yeah.
And then on the map, it looks like it's 10.09.
Oh, apologies. Yes, apologies, that's a typo. Yeah, transpose, yeah. So there's one that's been.
Any other questions, comments? We're prepared to move recommendations A and B. Taylor, seconder. Tracy, the discussion before I put it. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, let's move to plan change 21, dark skies. You've got that one as well.
Yeah, it's actually plan change 22, but I'm not quite sure what's in the run sheet. We've got the numbers in it, but in the reports there.
Sorry, I was reading the run sheet.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Wayne.
No, sorry.
Sorry.
I did notice that. And then I checked my reports and. Yeah. So plan change 22. It's the Native Vision is a community planning group that's been working for approximately 6 years with the community and with the IDA on establishing a dark sky reserve in and around the Naseby Township. It's something that this group's incredibly passionate about, and they've done a lot of work with the community and with the IDA. There's been a lot of engagement over a number of years. Their intention is to try, they're seeking a community dark sky. There's different categories through the IDA. To do that, they need to have some assurances that the provisions in the district plan support that. So that's what we've done with this. Council supported the group with the development of the background information that we used to write this. And it was, yeah, it's the done a lot of work. So council's already previously endorsed, supporting the dark skies through, some of our other policies around, for example, the 3,000 lumens LED lights for the roads and other things. So, and also there was a commitment made by council some years ago to support a plan change in the first, at that time it was when the district plan was reviewed with the new plan, but that'd be one of the first things that we do. So what we've done is, while the work that the NASB vision couldn't have undertaken is specific to NASB, we've adapted it so that we've got a generic chapter that can be applied to other areas in the future. So the intention is that, well, now it is about the NASB township because they're well aware of it and the community's been really engaged in that process. Going forward, that chapter, once it's been through the process, will be able to be applied as precedents on other areas throughout the district. So that's what we've done with that. One of the things that, because this is a council plan change, is there is an onus on us to engage with iwi authorities. That hasn't really happened through this process, but we have had some initial discussions with Okaha, so we're going to be working through that process with them. So I'd like to amend the recommendation slightly, it just in terms of we would like to, once we've engaged with Okaha, we've received the feedback, is to come back to council with some feedback loop to council if there's any changes that have been sought by Okaha, by the maybe to answer any questions.
Any questions? Yeah.
So these standards going to be just for new builds in new, new building, not current building, or is there any expectation that building owners will be needing to meet these standards?
No, the onus will be, it'll be on new builds and on new things that happen. One other thing that we have done in the group is work quite hard, and I probably should mention that, is a brochure that will be encouraging people to in sort of a non-statutory way of encouraging people to act in a certain way. So if they're replacing lights, to think about what that looks like and things like that. So no, it'll be on new activities coming in and encouraging those things. Yeah, that support the dark skies.
And because we can't do that because of existing use rights, but I think the community are really supportive of this, so they themselves will undertake what is necessary.
And it's been really successful in other areas where it is quite the communities are usually proud of these. So there's a few that I work in Mackenzie for a while. There's the first gold standard IDA accreditation was in Mackenzie, and also Stewart Island was another one there. The communities are really proud and they really support that. NASB is really special in terms of dark skies. It's kind of been described by an amateur astronomer as being like a black hole. And it's really, really good. Like it's dark. It's really, really dark. So it is something worth protecting, and it's really, really special. And the community there's always this really, really supportive.
Just saving time because it's taken them so long to get to this point.
Okay.
After conversations with Okaha,
Yeah.
and there's no problem, can we just go ahead? You don't need to come back to council.
Well, we don't need to, no, but I just was suggesting a feedback loop. It could be that we circulate where we've landed with Okaha.
I don't think it's appropriate for us to approve something we don't know what the end result is. Because if Okaha say do this, do this, do that.
Oh, if there's no changes. I think there will be.
Yeah.
I would think there might be some changes to the policy to make it a little bit to reflect perhaps not really.
And just sort of in that same vein, I think it's wonderful that it's got to this stage, but I'm just a little bit worried about that engagement with Okaha and it being right at the end when you've got a document, and that's not the way that we want to be operating, and just how that might be remedied.
Yeah, while it is at the end, I have quite active discussions with staff at Okaha, so it's not something that they have known about for a long time, for some time. So It's just been taking us a while to get to the drafting part of it, and we didn't have anything to give them until we got it drafted up. The original information that we received wasn't really appropriate for us to send through to so we have been engaging, and it's not likely to be, we're not anticipating. So there's 2 rounds that we have to do on the first schedule. So there's 2 rounds of engagement that we do that we're required to do, but we do have ongoing discussion with staff at OKR about the program. So we'll be talking for the most of this year about this that's coming up and what they've got on. I noticed down into them a couple of weeks ago speaking with them again about this and about a few opinions. So it is active, and then they are aware of the process and they're comfortable with the fact that we're coming to say, is this okay? And we're going to come back to OKR, so they're comfortable with that. It's difficult from a resource perspective. But but hopefully it won't take a long time. So.
Cheryl, did you?
No.
Anybody else? Any other questions?
I'm happy to move it.
Well, the B is going to be, based on what Anne said, B will
I
now,
think subject to the email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so B will actually read notes that the plan change will come back to council after consultation with OKR. So A, to receive the report, and B, that notes that the plan change will come back to council after consultation with OKR. Just close that loop. You have to remove that, Lynn?
Yeah.
Someone have to second it? Ian? Any more discussion? Put that all in favour? Against? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Anne. Okay, next on our agenda comes under our community vision and experience. I did well to get the vision, I thought. When I was going, oh no. I was going to pick it up. I was getting, making sure she was ready.
I am ready. I'm ready to hear about the Welcoming Communities Annual Report. Welcome, Peter and Paula.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. About a year ago that I came before council to inform you guys about the new program that we were embarking on, and here we are 18 months later, and there's a whole lot to report. So I'll try to make it quick, but first of all, I wanted to say thank you, because it was you guys that had the vision to say yes to this program, and the community said yes also. They have come to the table and really supported us. OKR has supported us. We have an angry advisor that we've been really pleased with. So it makes it a lot easier to run a program when you've got the support of people on our team. So thanks for that. So the real basis of this program is developing stronger communities. And we've all had a bit of a rough go the last couple of years, not just us, but everywhere in the world. And so what this program tries to do is to build stronger, more resilient communities. And we do that by being connected with one another. So we've been locked down, we've been isolated, we've worn masks, and we've done all those things, and that's kept us separated from one another. But what this program does is try to bring us back together. And there's some real practical, tangible benefits for that. So some of those are in economic development, which you might not immediately think of. When you think, well, communities, you might think of people sort of holding hands and singing Kumbaya, but it's really not that. It's a really practical program that delivers. So in economic development, some examples of things we've been doing is we've developed a partnership with Seasonal Solutions to look at ways we can better connect our seasonal staff. We tried to change the lingo a little bit, usually refer to them as seasonal workers, which we think dehumanizes that group a bit. And so we're trying to change that lingo to seasonal staff. And we're looking for opportunities to more to integrate them better into the community and ways that feel comfortable and help them feel more welcomed here. You may have seen some signs around town that say welcome seasonal staff. That was an initiative with the group seasonal staff in the Knock Beach, which is co-chaired with Welcoming Communities and Seasonal Solutions. Another example of economic development is a leadership scholarship that we partnered with Business South on to identify someone who is new to the community and is a business leader and provided the scholarship to attend the Leadership Academy in prom. So sort of another practical example where you take people who are new to the community, may be wondering whether or not this is a place for them. And we give them a little bit of a boost and help to integrate them with other business leaders so that they want to stay. And I think that benefits everybody. So we've talked about connections. And so those connections happen in business. Those connections happen as individuals as well. So another initiative that we've been really excited about here in Alexandria is to get our newcomers group started again. We had one about 5 years ago, fell apart for a number of reasons. We had a newcomer survey that we did earlier this year, and what newcomers told us is they wanted some formal groups where they could get together, talk to other people that were also new, find out information about the community, and just build some camaraderie. So that's moving, and it's not fully led by welcoming communities. We're one of 5 people sitting around the table. So building long-term commitment to the community beyond just welcoming communities. Our own program that we've got other people picking up the getting engaged in that same goal, that same vision. So we're not out there alone doing this. Cultural diversity is a part of this program, and when you look at our district, you probably think, oh, I'm not very culturally diverse compared to some other more urban areas. And we have found that while we don't have huge numbers, that there's a real disconnect for some of those folks. So one thing that we asked in our newcomer survey was, do you feel like your cultural beliefs or religious beliefs are respected in Central Otago? And the response wasn't overwhelming. There were large numbers of people that said, no, we don't feel like our cultural beliefs and our religious beliefs are respected here. So there's a lot of positive things to build on in this community, but there are some weaknesses too. So to address that part of the program, we partnered with an organization based out of Dunedin called Our Song New Zealand Trust. And they are the ones that funded the South Asian Festival that some of you may have heard about that happened here in Alexandria in July. So that festival was put together, in my view, sort of a barometer event. Is this something that people want? Is this something that people will come to? And overwhelmingly, the answer is yes. We had over 300 people attend that event. And it was in July, which admittedly is not the best time of year for large events. And it was indoors, which in a perfect world, it would have been summer and outside and all that. But time constraints meant that that's what it was held. And the response was really positive. So I think that's an indicator to me that there is an interest in these kinds of events. And people just had a really great time. And it was awesome to see. People were smiling and laughing and dancing and different ages, different ethnicities, and it was really rewarding to see. And I think there is a demand for more of that. So one question you might have about this program is, how much does it cost? If you're responsible for your constituents. And they may be asking you these questions. So how much does council pay? How much do we get from outside council? When you squish it all together, the overall annual council contribution is about $18,000. So that's the ratepayer contribution. Private and public contributions are about $75,000. So that's NB. There's a $50,000 annual contribution from NB for my role. There is an additional 10,000 contributions from NB. We have the South Asian Festival that I mentioned that cost about $7,000. So that was from our Song New Zealand Trust. We've received grants from ACOS. In-kind contributions from Business South for the Newcomer Leadership Scholarship. In-kind contributions for venues and food and different things like that. So when you look at the investment that we make versus what we get out of it, it is bang for the buck. And I think when you have a chance to look at the report, you look at all the different things that we're achieving on $18,000 ratepayer contribution, I think you'll feel like it was money well spent. The other important thing to realize is this does come with community support. Some people might say, well, do we need this? Isn't it pretty great to live here? And it is pretty great to live here, and we all are happy about that. But we do recognize that there's some areas that could be improved, and our community has reinforced that to us. So after the South Asian Festival, we obtained people's email addresses, and we sent them a really brief survey with like 4 questions on it. And we asked them, did you enjoy this? What would you like to do different? Try to get feedback about what they thought about that festival. And I can make that available to you if you're interested. So we have the link to those results. But the results were really positive. People felt really good about it, and they were asking, when is the next one? So I've been asked that quite a lot. When is the next one? When is it going to be planned? So that tells me that people want more. We did a series of welcoming workshops over the winter in preparation for developing this plan. And so which Rockford ran from Alex and asked stakeholders, normal people, anyone was invited. It wasn't an invitation only event. What do you want? You know, what do you think we should be doing? And that's reflected in this plan. So we also received anonymous information, feedback survey from those guys, everyone who attended. What do you think? Was it worth your time? Would you do it again? And it was positive. We've also had some folks in the community write letters and sort of their personal interactions with what the program has been like and what they think the value of that is. So I have one there from Reed, one from Citizen Solutions, and there's probably others, but if you would like to read any of those, I'd be happy to get those to you. And then finally, the plan itself. So I know this has been sent to you electronically. It's much more beautiful than our movie. If you have an interest in receiving a hard copy, just let me know. We don't want to unnecessarily sacrifice trees, but if you would like to see that, you'll see some familiar faces. Cynthia Santier are featured in that, as well as a couple others. So this report is the result of a series of consultations with the community, starting with the appointment of an advisory group. So that has been ongoing. That advisory group, which Sally used to do the rep, has been feeding into this plan from the beginning. We also did a stock take report where we sort of evaluated where are we, and that fed into this plan. We did a newcomer survey to find out what is it that newcomers want, what are they missing, what would they want to see from this program. That fed into this, as well as the welcome workshops. So I think that the people who've been involved in this will look at the results and say, yeah, this reflects what we think. And that's what we hope, because welcoming communities on our own cannot implement this plan. This is not a one-person part-time work sort of plan. This is a community plan. It requires everyone to have a stake in it. And so you'll see in this plan where the different spreadsheets are, the very last one says who was involved. So there's an action, there's a time frame, and who was involved, and welcoming communities is there, council's there. There's lots of other organizations there. It is a community plan. It's not a master plan. And we hope that it outlasts whatever funding we have from welcoming communities, and that this is a plan that we can look to in the future, and it can be held accountable because of the structure of the plan. It's quite easy just to turn to a page and go to a specific plan and say, this has been done. So it's an accountability action plan.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I went to the South Asian Cultural Festival as well with my kids and some of the other councillors, and really enjoyed it. And probably the thing that I enjoyed the most was the real obvious pride that the participants had in sharing their cultures. It was really quite special. And seeing all the posters that the young people had created, and then the outstanding prizes that they got, which was far above what you usually get for children's art prizes.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yes, yeah, I think they were very pleased. And the plan is great. There are concrete things that you can point to say, have we achieved this? Have we made a difference for people coming to our region? Because it is challenging, and I think we still saw quite a lot of that in that newcomer survey, which I think was really valuable. Does anybody have any questions for Deborah or Paula on that?
No, just a comment from me, just when I was reading through that, same thing with the survey, obviously, and like you said, there's a lot of things to work on. And I guess the big thing that stuck out for me was the delivering the plan. And that's where things get a bit, it's great to have all this, but it's that delivering of those things. So, I guess being able to measure that against something is really great. So I really applaud. It was a really great reading. So thank you.
And the good news is some of these things have already been done. So if I took this today and wanted to tick off what's been done, there's probably about 8 or so items on here that, so there's some evidence to show that some are easier to achieve than others. But there is some history of saying, yes, these are achievable things.
And the other exciting thing is this is a 3-year program and we're 18 months in. So we've spent these 18 months gathering information. We will continue to do that, but now we can really pin our ears back and do some good.
Wonderful. I'm happy to move that the report be received. Someone can second that. Thank you, Tracy. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Chair.
Pass over now for the next item, which is 22.10.5 on page 146, 3 waters depreciation increase and 3 waters. And Cheryl, we're going to lead us through that one, please.
Thank you. Okay, so 22.10.5 on page 146, 3 waters depreciation increase. And I'll let Chantal and Julie take us through that. Oh,
Right. Chantal's going to present that information on depreciation. I'm just going to introduce it because there's something a little bit unusual that we had to do this time with this report. So on Thursday last week, the Water Services Entities Bill was enacted, so it's now legislation, which means this is the first decision that's come to this council regarding 3 waters since that bill was enacted. So as such, any decision that council now makes related to that relates to or may affect the provision of water services is now subject to DIA oversight and approval before it's enacted. There's some criteria around what needs to be approved by the DIA before it can be enacted. So we've added a little extra box on the bottom of the compliance section of this report. So any decision which results in us adopting an annual plan or amending a long-term plan needs to go to the DIA approval. It's enacted. If we adopt a policy as required by the Local Government Act, or we make a decision that's significantly inconsistent with or anticipated to have consequences that will be significantly inconsistent with an existing policy or a plan that we've adopted, that has to go to the DIA for approval. And if we purchase or dispose of an asset other than in accordance with our long-term plan, then it's subject to it as well. We don't have any council control organisations relating to water, so that's not an issue for us, that one. And any contracts that we enter into from this point forward, other than on staff, will start to be approved by the DIA. We're waiting on some draft guidance material to come out from the DIA around how the monitoring process will be, the procedural approach to that. We expect to get that before Christmas, and we will head till the 26th of November to provide feedback on that approach. But I would suspect, it's in the legislation, it's just really the procedure that's going to follow to implement it, the opportunity to comment. that the recommendation that we've made in this report doesn't actually do any of those things that have to go to the DIA for approval, so we believe you can make, if you adopt the recommendation, then we'll be fine. But if you look at something different, that means the long-term plan will have to go to.
Take the report as read, and I'll just highlight a few of the key points. So we pretty much annually do a revaluation of three waters assets, and the most recent one was our 30th of June. This showed an increase in the replacement cost of the assets of around $102 million, which will lead to an increase in annual depreciation. The funding to meet this exceeds the long-term plan renewals program by $2.19 million. Council's financial strategy means depreciation funds the renewals program. So the capital budgets for water to 30th of June 2024 are already large at $46.5 million. Because of this, there's no capacity to spend additional renewals budget, which would essentially mean that they drop into a reserve. And any reserves come transition will transfer as essentially a reduction in the debt transfer. So just on top of that, obviously we've already spent quite a lot of money on renewing assets in the last few years and replacing them. And in the next year, we're expecting to spend quite a lot more as well. So we're not reducing our expenditure in renewals and replacements, just keeping with the long-term plan.
So there was funding, some of the projects we did in the stimulus funding that were funded by government were also renewals. So while we're not increasing in depreciation, we're actually probably a bit ahead of our renewals, given that the government funding to accelerate some of what got done later on.
So what percentage of the, so some of that value lift will be government incentivised. How do we depreciate on something that's a gift?
No, so most of those projects, when the valuation was done, were still work in progress. So they don't come through in the current valuation, but as Chantel stated in the report, we don't just expect an increase this year, we also anticipating another increase next year. And Chantel's outlined what she thinks that will be in the report. So that decision we're making we're asking you to make today actually relates to this year and next year. Where the assets get funded isn't that material probably. It's once they're on the books, you're then valuing them and depreciating the replacement in the future.
Everybody know.
Yeah, so the key thing about that, if I understood Julie, what you said is that eventually it's all about what it's going to cost to replace the infrastructure. That's what the whole depreciation is based on. No matter when you get it, how you get it, how it's funded, doesn't matter. Some of it we fund through our depreciation anyway to do a renewals program, which is similar to what we do in the roading side of things. So we use that money to do the forward spend, and that works out the same effect. The concern that I've got takes that through though, and says that are we just creating a bow wave?
Yeah.
And I guess how do we deal with that? And how do we deal with it fast? There's a hand up to your right.
The issue that we've got to be very mindful at the moment is that we have a duty to ensure we've got a balanced budget. And if we deviate from our previous financial strategies, what that could mean is that we're going to be recouping more from rates, and we can actually keep the work program done in the next 18 months. And there is a deviation from financial strategy. So that's my concern here, is that we have to be mindful of balanced budgets, and the fact that we've got this revaluation now, we know that we can only get that work program done in the next 18 months. So I would think it's prudent to stick with the principles of financial strategy.
And in question of that bow wave, what we did under the stimulus project, projects actually reduce the risk of that bow wave occurring by not funding this depreciation. You know, that they put in the village operation. That's probably
So what I'm hearing is that what's proposed here in the recommendation says it does all the right things for us, free waters or changes or not, this recommendation will be the same, and it's consistent with what we've done in previous occasions, lines up with our current financial strategy, and gives us a balanced budget. And even if it did have to go to DIR, which I quite honestly wouldn't mind if it did, because it would give us some confidence if they're right. But that's what I think I'm hearing. Is that, am I on the right track?
Yes, and look, I would expect that they will have an interest in this particular report because when I spoke to the 8 Otago Southern councils on Monday, we're the first council to consider this issue. Every council is considering this issue. That will be the same.
So why was the valuation so high?
Because for 3 reasons, and Chantal's actually mentioned them in the report. One is that we get a lot of invested assets from development. So once they come on our books, then our value goes up. We did a lot of capital work ourselves. So that work that was completed added to the value of assets. And then the third thing that we can't get away from that probably had the biggest implication is the fact that when you calculate your depreciation value of the assets, you're looking at what it's going to cost to replace it, and costs have gone up so significantly that the rates that we use to calculate values are much higher. So therefore, higher cost to replace value of assets.
So if as we go out, they'll be valued again next year and the year after, and when we go into Three Waters, when we pass over their assets, the best thing we can have is a high asset base because it comes back as capital, correct? Or as well, I guess with the biggest, I'm just thinking differently, but our asset of replacing it now seems to be, to me, inflationary, because Three Waters are sitting out there now, like some of the work that's been done, whether we're pumping water from the Torre River to Naseby or looking at all these other things, it only adds value to the water pot.
Yeah, the assets we built, the higher the value of the assets.
Yeah, but some of it is future proofing, isn't it? It's been built into the asset, which is something we argue is totally unrealistic. That suits the Three Waters model. So where does our value end up, I guess, in takeover day? When we move out of it, when do we move out? I mean, are we going to depreciate something that is in the never, and our ratepayers have to pay for it and then lose the asset?
So what's happening here and what we're proposing is that the depreciation that's being funded is being spent now. If we were to fund more depreciation to maybe what the revaluation is, we would effectively be reducing the amount of debt that we transfer to the new entities. So the money that we're raising from the rates that were set in the long-term plan is all being spent. So that probably answers that question.
And we're not doing it to reduce what would be transferred, reducing debt that would be transferred or increasing debt to be transferred. We're doing it in line with previous financial strategies. And my advice is if you want to change a financial strategy, it's best to do that under an outbreak situation. Only consult.
So, any further questions? So we go back to then page 46 and the recommendations. So do I have a mover for A, B and C? Yeah. Martin and Lindley? Second. So all those in favour? Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. But just to make an observation, I expect DIA to be looking at this anyway. Yeah, which would be good.
Seeing the first out on blocks. Yeah.
Cool.
They are reviewing council agendas from now on.
Right, what we're going to do now, we're going to hand over to Stu for the roading portfolio on 22.10.6.
Welcome to Susan, and we'll talk about the same thing. Depreciation expenses related to roading assets.
I have probably got the wrong one looking at the financial considerations. In this decision, we would be avoiding significant increase in rates, reducing the rates that are now.
That was in the last report too, I think.
So
But this is consistent also with treatment in the past and consistent with their previous financial strategies to align education with works program that we know that we have done. And you can see within the table here for what we had in the LTP, which is this page 3 of mine. By all of the council agenda, you can see that we're not deviating from the long-term plan. It's a very little difference. But so we need some work carrying forward, taking place this year, and that's been reduced for the annual plan in 2024 by 1.7 million. So this one is a little bit easier because it is definitely in line with what you instructed through the LTP.
Any questions? I think the key thing from my perspective is that every time there's an asset evaluation, it doesn't matter what it is, we see an impact on depreciation. Yeah. And we seem to be regularly having this conversation as part of our boarding and part of our annual planning, long-term planning. And just like the Three Waters, this is the consistent approach that we've adopted in the past. And nothing I'm hearing tells me that there's any reason for us to change what we've done. It's worked well for us. The Three Waters, there is some other things that are happening outside that, but it is about being consistent. And also the reality is we've done this in the past and continue to do it so that our ratepayers don't get hit. It's something that isn't going to necessarily affect them because it's in the long term. And our is it the policy of funding our annual works program for roading and Three Waters infrastructure from appreciation has served us well. And you've only got to look in particular at that the roads aren't bad, there's a few issues, but just sure expect that, but that's a second. Now that you look at Three Waters in particular and go, we've done pretty well. It's not perfect without a shared doubt, but it's a lot better than a lot of other places.
And I think what's happened in the past too with financial strategies is that when you get something like this, where we've got such huge escalation, we typically wouldn't address that all in 1 year. We would typically not very heads in the steam with it, but we would actually address it through something like a long-term plan, so we could do a phased approach. And even though the last long-term plan wasn't here, I believe it was done something like pools where the depreciation really increased. So we phased it in so that we were taking it into account, but we didn't correct for escalation or the and I think it's really important that we do that through a long-term plan. And that way we've got good mechanisms for the consultation with that.
Excellent. Any other questions? I'll like to move recommendations. Tracy, second. Carol, all those in favour? Thank you. Against?
Aye. Oh, sorry.
That was four. Thank you very much.
I was sorting out what's happening next, so we're running ahead of schedule.
That's what we like these days. Tracy?
Tracy, and Cheryl. Sure.
Maybe both of you could have paid attention.
Feel better now? Thank you, Stu. Okay, we are due now to move to 22.10.7, which is an insurance program renewal, but we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so that's going to be delayed. And we're now going to shoot to the financial report for the period ending October. Is that all right with you guys? So item number 22.10.8, and I'll pass over to Donna to take us through that, please.
That is being read. Most of the major variances for the period have not changed significantly since the September report. So for October 2022, we had an overall favorable operating variance of 1.8 million. with a 1.4 million favourable variance for income, which is continually being driven by development reserve contributions, and is offset by unfavourable variance in our grants areas, mainly due to the long-term training program. There's also the youth fees continuing here with the timing of the net water sales revenue against the budget, and also the progress down for those 3 waters director position. So for the expenses, the overall favourable variance of 342,000 is still being driven by the cost of sales. Without this, there's been an unfavourable variance of 993,000. This has been driven by 3 waters operating expenses, and that's still to do with the emergency works and the home care carried out in July, and increased service requests and active repairs. We also have the Roxburgh Hall branch of 500,000 business variance as well. So overall, the unfavourable areas include roading, parks and recreation, and 3 waters. And the unfavourable areas are infrastructure, property, and so we've discussed all of the main areas with water return subsidies through to increase in development contributions. So at present, we have spent a total of 14% of our capital expenditure, and this is still coming down to timing of projects, budgets with the work programs, the contractors' availability, design and administration, and also the planning stages. So it's quite very across all departments. Our internal loans are forecasted to close at 30 June for 4.1 million. With our external loans having an outstanding balance in October of 100.
Thank you. Any questions about finance team? I've got one. Is there anything in this report or our current situation that keeps either you two, any of the group managers or the chief executive awake at night?
Present as we're waiting for our annual report to be audited is the effect of the revaluations depreciation. That will be.
And just to give an update on that, we're still hopeful we might get a report next week. Is that hopeful of Santa Claus coming on Sunday week or?
No.
Oh, no, it's definite.
Today. Yes, so there's quite a few questions come through just before, coming in. So it's straight back at answering those. We're hoping to be in contact with the audit lead today to get an update. As we get to get a report ready for the agenda next week.
Thank you. Any other questions? None, I'll put the recommendation when I find it. And that the report be received. Someone like to move that. Taylor seconded. Ian, all in favour?
Aye.
It's carried. Thank you. Okay, let's now move back in our agenda to item 22.10.7, which is our insurance program renewal. So we've got some insurers that are going to join her and take us through this particular item.
Welcome, Matthew, Fiona, Ian and Laney from Aon, and I've got a presentation to go through and then Susan will present the paper.
Cool, thank you. Welcome, team.
Good morning.
And thank you for being early.
Thank you for seeing us early, man. Excellent.
Yeah, well, I won't take any credit. It's good luck. I mean, it's good news. Anyway,
Thank you for putting on glorious weather. Stunning day, so.
We can do the weather. It's easier to make our meetings run the time. I think I have the presentation on that one behind us. We've got Bruce Brand, unfortunately.
Thank you. So thank you very much for allowing us to come and speak with you all today. As ask you with that, I'm Deanna McDonald, and with me is Matthew Wilson and Elaine Wilson. We're not related. So Matthew and I are based in Hamilton. We run the local government risk practice group for Aon. We, in one way, shape or form, work for approximately 70 out of the 78 councils, various guys around the country. Elaine is your first point of contact as your account manager. She's based in Dunedin. If we can move on to the next slide, please. There we go. Okay.
Excellent.
So this is our servicing and strategy team. So as I say, we are based in Hamilton. We have a photo of David Robson there as well, who works in the risk space with us, based in Hamilton. Elaine, and then Kim, who is the claims manager and works closely with Elaine. So next slide, sorry. Thank you. We've got a brief agenda today, and we'll just work through what the market is currently doing in insurance, then on to the renewals, and then this is that we'll talk through. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Go to the next slide, please. Right, so this isn't death by PowerPoint, and please feel free to sing out with any questions as we go along. We'll try and keep this brief, because I know you've got a pretty full-on day. Insurance market currently, we're in actually quite a unique set of circumstances. And there will be a theme through the next 2 or 3 slides that you will see. So that slide is taken from a report that Aon did globally. Now, why are we talking about global issues when we're down in Alex in the South Island in New Zealand? Well, everything is linked together. So there are factors that need to be considered, and we'll go and sort of hopefully unpick some of those on the way through for you. So we say it's been a rocky year. We've had an increase in the number of natural catastrophe events globally. The political events in Eastern Europe have caused issues. I was back in London in September, and the whole conversation in London was about how much power bills are going to go up by because of pipelines and inability to get power, gas, whatever it may be. Which then has added to an already happening inflationary spiral globally. Cost of rebuild cost of labour, cost of parts and materials. It is significant, and it is relevant to the insurance programme. I'll come on to that in a second. If I could go to the next slide, please. So there's quite a lot of information on there. You may not be able to see that brilliantly, but if we'd done this presentation 18 months ago, we would have spoken about natural catastrophe disasters. We would have spoken about earthquakes. We would have spoken about large hurricanes, tempests, wildfires. Whilst those are still there, what is actually happening is globally there is an increase in what is referred to as secondary cat losses. And those are largely weather events, not necessarily a full-blown hurricane, but a severe rainstorm. And if you think about Australia, we've had a couple of events go through there. Cost on one of those was about 4.5 billion Australian. There were floods in Europe going back 18 months, Belgium, Germany, quite significant events. There's been some significant events in the US. There's also been events in New Zealand. Hastings had a major flooding event about November 18 months ago. Top of the South Islands had a number. And what is happening is these events are increasing in their severity as well as their frequency. So we are seeing bigger claims coming out of those. And they are on that slide over there, they're represented, those secondary cat points are represented by the dark blue. Sort of they're sitting on top of, so you can see that they're there. What that slide also refers to, which is very relevant, is Hurricane Ian. It's the hurricane that impacted Florida a few months ago, and the estimated costs on that are somewhere between 60 to 70 billion US dollars. it is going to be a significant event. We could go to the next slide, please. Again, that's just another graphic representation of how there's been an increase in the secondary natural catastrophe perils that we're seeing. Probably don't need to rehash that one, so if we could just jump to the next one. So we've seen this increase in the frequency and severity of these secondary events, which is impacting reinsurance markets. The double whammy, which is not helping everyone's cause, is that the inflationary pressures are going through the roof as well. For yourselves, I think the number on the material damage schedule from last year to this year is about 48% increase in value. Now, some of that will be just market values, but a lot of that will probably be down to inflationary costs, where the cost of labour, the cost of materials, there's huge shortages of people. I don't know where they've all gone, but there's huge shortages of people. So we are really struggling with major inflationary pressures. Why is that a concern? Well, there's a couple of reasons that's a concern. If you then take a secondary natural catastrophe event, which might be a relatively, or what was a relatively minor flood, if the values at risk have increased by 20-25% because of inflationary pressures, that relatively minor event suddenly becomes an expensive event. So you're getting this double whammy, we're getting them happening more often, and also the dollar values associated with the marine risk. What all this means is A, it's very difficult to forecast claims costs from an insurer's point of view because it changes in every 6 month cycle. But the other point is it's increasing reinsurance costs, and insurers are looking a lot more carefully as to where they are deploying their capital. So we won't know until the beginning of January when a number of reinsurance treaties are signed, and we'll get some feedback from that. But if we were to be asked a question under a material damage policy, this is probably a slightly conservative number, you could be looking between 15 to 20% rating increase in the underlying rates. That coupled with what values do, and we will come on to some of this because there are things that you can do to deal with this. This is not perhaps a little bit doom and gloom, but it's just the reality that we're trying to look at and see how we can manage for you. So that's sort of an estimated forecast, but we won't know until after Christmas, New Year, when global reinsurance contracts are largely negotiated and signed. Why, again, I mentioned why we're talking about global stuff. All of your insurers that are involved in your program will have some form of global ownership, whether it's American or Australian. So these things impact the entire insurance market to some extent. Certain parts of Europe, certain parts of America, South Americas will be feeling a lot more of that than we do in New Zealand, but there are going to be upward pressures. Is there any questions on any of that? There's lots of
none of this is new. None of this is new. You've been revaluing insurance every year.
Yeah. Well, the underlying rating increases that we have seen for property programs, if I just look at the underlying rate over the last 3 to 5 years, have probably gone up on average between 5 to 10%. So that's the underlying rate. If your values are then increasing as well, of course, the problem is you get a 20% increase in values, let's say, and a 5% increase in the underlying rate. The dollar value that you see is 25%. And as I said, this year, I think through a revaluation exercise and as I said, there are some things we can do to look at this. So it's not all doom and gloom, but we're just putting it out there that, for November next year, we need to be doing a bundle of work with the team to identify what the levers are that we can pull to help mitigate the impacts of the market. And obviously we, as Dee said, we act for getting on somewhere or another 70 local authorities. We will be negotiating as well with insurers. We don't just take this and roll with it. Obviously that's what our job is. But we're just setting that at the initial stages, that is what we are hearing in the marketplace with the reinsurance. Now the reinsurance costs don't necessarily always flow down to the retail market, but we're just raising that as a plan.
How much your value and portfolio is international?
Sorry.
How much of our insurance in New Zealand has an international component to it? And
well, all of the insurers go back to an international owner, a US or Australasian owner.
there's no New Zealand owners of insurance companies left.
So you take the main one. NZI is Insurance Australia Group. AIG is an American company who are in New Zealand. Vero is Suncorp, Australia. So it's all, you know. The saving grace is that we're talking about potential global impacts that may get filtered down a bit, reduced down a bit by the time we get to New Zealand. As I said, the underlying trend for the last 3 years, maybe a little bit longer, has been single-digit increases in terms of underlying rates. That's hit the trend to the rest of the world. The rest of the world has been sort of 10, 15 points. So there is it's not completely uniform, if that makes sense. There are some differences, but we're just highlighting that as possible issues currently to consider. Could we go on to the next slide? Because there are things that we can do. This is just a very quick summary about the liability program. So you obviously have your public liability, your professional indemnity. I won't go into huge amounts on this. There are some conversations happening in this space. All councils, and this is not a you comment, this is a generic council comment for non-regional councils. The biggest exposure we see in the liability space is all around building consenting. Something happens with the building consenting process, whatever it may be, that's where the claims are being driven from. One of the conversations we will be having with the team moving forwards is what are you doing in terms of additional risk mitigation aspects towards those processes? Is there any additional information we can give to underwriters? The actual market currently is relatively static. We have seen some big adjustments over the last 2 years, 3 to 2 years, but now the market is getting relatively static in this space, and it's about +5% on the premium for liabilities, which is obviously, we don't see that changing either, to be honest with you. That's what we'll be forecasting for the next 12 months. We've got a cursory mention there of a couple of other policies. These are just general market comments. 2 of the most distressed policy classes at the moment are cyber and forestry. Quite distinct exposures and risks, I understand. The forestry market is limited. There's 1 or 2 companies who will now write forestry business. It's very, very small. And cyber is going that way as well. So cyber exposures. And the issue with cyber is insurance is a fortuity. Insurance is about something that may happen. Cyber is rapidly becoming, and this again isn't a comment about yourselves, this is just a comment. Cyber is rapidly becoming something that it's almost a question of it's almost a question of when, not if. So insurers are being very mindful around that. That is impacting the premiums and rates.
The reason for forestry is why?
The reason for forestry, feed losses globally again, and complete lack of appetite in markets to write stuff. And that is not just at the council level, that's if you're a big commercial forestry block, you're having the same, there's probably only 2 insurers on the team stuff. There's been a number of very large losses globally.
National market, customers, quite a few losses there.
Fine losses.
Well, it's going to get worse, isn't it?
It is all linked. You've hit the nail on the head. All of these conversations are linked.
And yeah, and that's one that will be worse just with the word of carbon and the value of it.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, right, Karen.
Moving on.
Yeah, I wasn't going to do the rabbit hole.
No.
He knew he didn't need to as well.
We'll do a very quick, so that's a market overview. We'll do a very quick summary of what the renewals are. I think there's a separate report that's got some information in. So we'll just not gloss over this part. This will be spoken about somewhere else. So there was, in terms of the, we can go to the next couple of slides, I think it is, please. And again, please. So material damage and business interruption, we have mentioned that there was the underlying rate increased by about 5%. However, you did have quite a significant increase in your values, which is why your premium increased substantially when you look at it in the report, because it's about 40-something% increase in values, but the underlying rate percent was in that single digit, about 5%, which is ahead of the market. It's where we wanted it to be, and that was again negotiating with insurers. The liability. So sorry, next slide, please. Liabilities was around about the 10% for the professional indemnity and 5% public liability. And again, that is detailed in one of the reports that I believe is coming up next. You also purchase something called an excess layer liability placement. This is a cost-effective way of providing you with an additional layer of cover. That is placed out of the London markets. And that policy was put onto a temporary extension. Just what we're on then, sure. That was put on a temporary extension from the 1 November renewal because CNA Hardy, not CAN Hardy, as it says there, withdrew from the local government sector internationally. And they gave us 4 days notice. So this isn't a New Zealand decision. This was a decision that was taken at their head office level, and they just walked from any municipality business, local authority business, local government business globally. So we have been to London in September to present to the London markets because New Zealand councils are quite unique. Well, New Zealand is quite unique as well. If you talk to a liability underwriter about personal injury issues, they get nervous. Because if you're in Australia, they call it slip and trip, somebody falls over, hurts themselves, you can sue for personal injury. In New Zealand with ACC, broad brush conversation, with ACC, you can't. There isn't that full exposure that you see in the rest of the world. I'm from the UK, that was, one of the biggest exposures was personal injury of third parties' property, that sort of stuff. We don't have that in New Zealand. The other thing we don't have here is that local authorities are not responsible for fire services, education, ambulance services, those sort of things, which they are in other territories internationally. We went to London, we explained all that through to them very clearly, face to face with the Lloyd's markets. And because of that, we were very easily able to replace the capacity that we have from Hardy with another insurer. It's just taken about 6 weeks to get done. That has now been finalised in place as of Monday. So that's a good problem solved. Good outcome from that. What's next? Forestry. Well, I think again that's going to be covered off in the conversation. So could we go to a couple of slides, please? That one says levers. Right. So it's a very busy slide, but we'll come on to this. And this is a conversation we'll be having with the team moving forwards. We've said that values are going up dramatically. We've said that insurance rates may go up dramatically. So there are a number of things that you can do as an entity to control the impacts of that. Simply put, your insurance premium for your material damage and business interruption is a rate percent applied to the total declared values. So if you declare $240 million worth of assets, there is a rate percent applied to that. That generates premium. So what can we do? Well, we can change or consider changing a number of things. Do you need to insure all of your assets? This isn't a you conversation. This is a conversation we're having with all local authorities. This is a conversation we have with large corporates. Do you need to insure all of your assets? Do you have a lot of assets that you don't need to worry about from an insurance perspective? That's not a simple process, but it is a process that we need to have and go through the conversation we need to have with people. Your current excess levels. Currently, your excess level on your replacement for material damage is about $5,000, I believe. That for a corporate entity is low. It's about right for councils, but for a corporate entity, that is low. What is your risk appetite? Do we know what that is? Could we look at a higher level of deductible? We've got to understand what those impacts are. And there has to absolutely be a cost benefit to you in this process for insurance premium savings. So these are just a number of things that we will start to table with the team to have conversations so that we can start working towards that sort of process to understand some of these levers. There are others, but I won't go into them now because that's a whole sort of hour and a half presentation. Mindful of time. But these are some of the conversations that we will be having with the team. And Deanna and I have been to see 3 councils over the last 3 days, and we've had exactly the same conversation with 3 councils. And they're all at different sizes. In a soft market, we don't need to have these conversations. But in a hard market, when we're looking at some of the things that we're now looking at, we need to start having these conversations. So there hasn't been the dire need to do this previously. It's not like anybody's missed a trick. It's just that we're now in a market space where if this carries on, we need to consider some of these things. We're all ratepayers. I know that 20% plus 20% plus 20% plus 20% is unsustainable year on year on year. I don't know what the margins are for rents. I mean, I've had some councils come with numbers that are not expecting $100,000 to be 1% on the rates, 200,000 to 1% on the rates, depending on the size. So we are mindful of some of this stuff. We want to work with you to try and come up with solutions.
Next slide, please.
Thank you. Okay, so part of the offering that we do for our council clients is we offer various education processes, forums, and we have our risk forums coming up next year in February. Christchurch would obviously be the closest one for you because the others are in the North Island. But so that's on the 8th of February, and they're available to anybody within council who would like to attend. They are free, and they are a full day. So we will go through, and we've got various speakers there, and I mentioned a couple of them. So Sarah Jane, that's coming from EQC, is going to be talking about the new portal that they've got available. And this will be working on the individual houses that can be loaded into there, and they can look at what their earthquake risk is. It's good for the councils to be able to understand this for your future planning, for your LGPs. And it shows you where the floodplains are and that sort of thing, so you can understand what's going to be happening with the climate change as well. So it's got all that information taken into effect. So once again, this leads into your liability discussions with consenting, resource consenting, etc. Simon from Rice Fair will be leading that conversation further into the liabilities and how it affects council. Then we've got Miles Lynn from Auckland Transport. Now he actually is involved with IFWEA, which is the International Engineering Association, and is the APEC chairman. So he will be discussing around the asset ownership and looking at what's the risk modelling and that type of thing associated with your asset ownership. And then we have Lydia Pettinger from Homes NZ. He is going to be talking alongside some speakers from TNT. Now this is in relation to the National Seismic Hazard Model updates that came through and just what that means in that space. Understanding whether the risk modelling that may be done around the countryside to understand your exposures and how these have been updated. Previously, the last one was about 2013, they looked at the updates. So we've got those people coming along amongst others, including someone from Aura, which is a cyber liability specialist. They go in and do deep dives into businesses to be able to look at those. And alongside that, we've got people from Wellington Able that we work with closely on a ESG outlay, like understanding and working with them in their work that they do in the community. So if you don't know anything about them, they are a business that works with mentally and physically handicapped people, and they originally started out online and then COVID hit, and they went through and tried to work out how else they could move into the community. They have got cleaning products that they put up. And it is run by these people that are involved right the way through. And we work with them to help do the recycling side of things. And they will be talking about the interactions on that side. So there's a few others that are around as well, but it's just really giving you an opportunity to network with other councils as well, network with our fellow colleagues and these other specialist speakers that will be coming along. So if you'd like to find out more, the invites have been sent out to certain staff. So Susan, that's the I've got those. So that is us. If there's any other questions, we can answer them. Otherwise, we will hand over.
Susan, I think, carry on and the questions will come if they come.
So that's second scene of the report. So I'll take the report and really what we're looking at here is obviously an increase in their insurance premiums in the current year. Renewal with the 1st of
November 2022. And then we'll look at the, and through the process over the next 12 months. Effectively, what we're requesting here is an additional budget of approximately 212,000, which is, just to put it in context for you, is about 0.66 of a percent on rates. So we do look at around that 300,000 mark as 1% on rates. And we have outlined here where the increases are. You've heard from the presenters today that it's really in that material damage perspective. We as management have got a little bit of work to do to finalise this renewal program. And I just want to advise you that we will also be included within that figure. We will also be just finalising the forestry block and Cromwell. I think that's become a non-issue as far as really is concerned. So we're finalising that over the next couple of days, and the report stands at the 212,000.
In addition to the forestry block, a slight misunderstanding there. It looks like it's an increase in excess, so not an increase in the premium. We do want to have further discussion with Aon just around what forestry block it is, but no additional budget needed today on top of paper.
You could have a bit scared if the revenue available from the forestry block might be less than what the premium would be. In this case, they might have a solution. Do you?
Probably agree with too.
Cool. Thank you. Tony.
Because you're here, and I thought we'd make use of it. What does insurance look like for local government in 10 or 20 years' time?
Woo. You just spoiled your day.
Thank you. And who knows? And that's not a flippant answer. Elephant in the room, three waters. So I now, I don't know if this is a bit or not, this is my opinion. I just want to clarify that. This is my opinion. With a bit of an educated sense around it. We don't know if Three Waters is happening or not. That is still to be decided. I'm being incredibly cynical. That is still to be decided. Something is going to happen, whether it's in the current format or whether it's in a different format. Something will happen. To answer your question, you may be relieved of a bundle of assets that you currently have staff looking after, you currently have, obviously, registers of requirements to deal with, etc., etc. So that's the first thing that could go and change fundamentally what a council does, or a big chunk of what a council does. There are various other reforms coming through with the RMA, etc., etc. I think the question is perhaps what does a council look like in 20 years' time? And I'm sort of avoiding the question, but what does a council look like in 20 years' time? And I think that there is a lot of conversations to be had, because I'm not sure we know what that's going to look like. If you assume Three Waters goes through in some form, you will have diminished responsibility in those areas. You become a smaller entity, I presume, because you have a number of staff currently who will be doing Three Waters work that will probably go into one of these bigger entities, or however that's going to work. Yeah, it's difficult. What are the changes in legislation? I think Deanna was talking about Will Enable, who is somebody that I'm partnered with from that economic social governance point of view. I think there's a big focus on that. We were down at the local government conference in Farnstone North. I don't know if any of you attended that, but there was a very big focus on young elected members, changing the electorate, changing the way things are represented. So that's going to be a huge consideration that needs to be taken into account. I think socially we're a huge change in 20 years.
What did they drop in the UK?
Sorry,
Why did the insurers take local government out of it in the UK? You brought up a presentation. Some of them, one of them wasn't on the insurer.
Oh, okay. So the If you're saying, well, why did they?
Yeah, what was the reason to say I've not been involved in this big, because in New Zealand, it's a big chunk of business.
Yeah, so the reason is global claims because of the personal injury and the increase in the litigious nature as well. So what we have seen them yet in New Zealand, they are starting class action lawsuits. I'm not a lawyer, keep putting all these these caveats by saying I'm not a lawyer. We have seen slowly an increase in class action suits. So one individual suffers an issue, then they get people together to sue for that issue. We've seen an increase in litigation funders. So a third party starts funding the legal proceedings and they take 10, 15, 20% or whatever it is, they make money out of that process. When I came to New Zealand in 2004, New Zealand wasn't a particularly litigious country. That has changed dramatically. And there are a number of issues which are driving that, I think. So CNA Hartley's conversation was along the lines of we've got too much exposure because we've written too much of it in the past. We've had a number of large personal injury claims which don't apply to New Zealand because of ACC, or largely don't apply to New Zealand because of ACC. And they've also had a number of class action suits brought against them globally. So that's when we are at the whim of an American-based company effectively saying, yeah, we're not writing this stuff anymore. Because whilst New Zealand is a reasonably large chunk of business, total New Zealand premium performance to the global markets is something like 2.2%. It's a small amount. Don't quote me exactly on that, but it's a relatively speaking small amount. So they just brought it up.
And the other question is, in 20 years' time, low sea level or sea level rise, it must be a nightmare for councils and insurers if that becomes an issue.
How are you dealing with your, and I don't know the geography around here well enough to be honest with you, but this is.
Take a while for the sea to get up there.
The sea gets here, the rest
You're
of
in
the council will be
trouble.
told.
Yeah, no, people say to us in Hamilton, if we get a tsunami in Hamilton, it's a bad day for New Zealand, right? But the issues around where you build from low-lying floodplains, where you're putting your resource consents in terms of where you're letting development take place, that in retrenchment, is it retrenchment? Is that the right word? I mean, there are a number of councils up north where they have river systems that people have built on over years, and they're saying, no, okay, it's not safe to live, but go because it's
Yeah, the consequence of that is that if you don't insure them, they can't get a mortgage.
absolutely.
So the insurance companies could actually completely design the planning of where we build.
So this is that EQC conversation, where the person is coming from EQC to talk about, because sorry, we might go down a rabbit hole here, I'll be real quick. I had an exact same conversation with somebody yesterday, because I can see this. You can't buy domestic insurance. Let's say an insurer stop you from buying, won't allow you to buy domestic insurance, won't offer it. You'll always be able to buy it, just because they're expensive. You can't get insurance, you can't get a mortgage, you can't buy a house. So you can't get kids going to schools. You can't get people earning money. You start going down this horrific social fabric type conversation if we're not careful. That's a bad day, and that's one extreme. The other extreme is we'll find other ways of dealing with problems, which is what will happen. But it is something that why these forums are about risk and not about insurance, because it is the conversations, what does 20 years look like? And there are people far smarter than me to answer those questions.
So I'm going to bring it back to today.
Yes. Sorry.
You can pick the age difference between Tony and I. She's thinking about it.
Easily two to be fair. You said it.
In front of the guests.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hang on, there's a difference.
Susan, the report tells me that we're going to fund the increase through rates. But for the current financial year, we've already done the rates. So that means we're going to overspend for this year, and then an increase in annual plan for FY 24. So
Will they be subject to a further report coming back to us? Those actually. Yeah, they'll continue the background and stuff.
Yes, it will for the next year.
Yeah.
And for this year, we'll see it in,
financial reports.
funding.
So the recommendation we've got B talks about funding it this year, and it probably should say the increase to be funded for rates from FY 24. This will be an overspend that will come out of a bucket somewhere.
We're still very keen to see if we can't.
She reduced it, yeah,
We're
sorry.
pretty unhappy
So,
with
so I think in terms of what's being recommended is to make sure councils are clear is that, so this year there will be an overspend against the insurance cost, and next year there'll be an adjustment to the FY 24 annual plan. Any other questions?
Sorry, if the conversation still to be had, I'm working with that there are some items that don't need to be insured. Because that we can go through.
Yes, so we're doing it as an operational level, we're taking us down in the property. And we've pretty much got it aligned now, so it's where the community board is got they wanted fund the replacement of that. So we make sure that if the insurance can do it's just demolition and that's not really statement. So we just go through and make sure that it's finance, I guess, looking at it from the same perspective as the. So we don't.
My comment, just to clarify, that those leaders comment that I was making, they're generic comments about the bodies of work that we can do with the council. So with it, and it is iterative, it's constantly evolving. So we have this ongoing dialogue, communication around what we look at and we respond to what belongs.
And recommendation C, when we picks that up, get the staff to say, don't stop it, just accept the 2012, get it back to 12.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I didn't.
Yeah.
It's approximately with the four.
Any other questions?
466.
Right, I'm going to propose that recommendation B, so we're back on page 157. Recommendation should be the increase for FY 23 to be funded as an overspend, and for FY 24 via the annual plan process. Does that make sense? Just so we know what we're doing. Slide, that's not. The increase for FY 23 will be funded by an overspend, and FY 24 through the annual plan process. Good. Cool. So A, B, and C, with that revision to B, just to reflect that what happened this year, next year. So Taylor, is that yes? I'd like to move that. Taylor's move that. Second, please. Martin. Any more discussion? All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, team. It was good to get it up. Most of the questions are actually, most of us worry about our personal insurance, I'm sure. But I think that's just here for looking for Jesus in the people. Right.
Indications.
We're now going to move, it's lunch is due at 12:30 and we're about 25 minutes running early. So we're going to move now to 22.10.9, page 248. And Rebecca's going to join us, I think, yes, right, so talk about the development of district vision and wellbeing framework. Welcome.
Thanks.
Great to have you here.
So thank you for the opportunity to address the meeting today. The development of a community wellbeing framework helps articulate what's important, will help articulate what's important to the citizens of Central Otago now and into the future. As you're acutely aware of, we're facing a significant reform program as local government, and for me, I see this work will help us ensure that our local community determines its own future and figures out what's important to them and how we reach that, so that then whatever reform happens, we are very clear on the pathway that we want to take and can articulate that to both the central government and other groups and organisations. The work will build on that's already been undertaken both internally and externally. So for instance, we've done spatial plan, we're doing spatial plan in Peter Valley, we've done one in Vincent, we've done master plan in Cromwell. So we have a whole heap of data as well as the destination management planning. There's a whole heap of rich data that we can use to build on. We've also been working on the
this over the past year, we've been working with the Otago Regional Council, who've been doing a wellbeing framework. The council, discussed an update in September, late September, and they voted to leave it on the table, subject to a workshop with the council, the new council, once the elections have been, so that it's a bit of a holding pattern then. But what it has done has been to articulate more regionally what data already exists and what data there is a gap in. And so it helps us as a smaller part of that district or region to narrow in on Central Otago. So, and we've been actively part of that process today. The project team, we've had an internal project team. We met, was it the week before last? Was our first meeting, and it was awesome to have the people internally come around and get excited about this project and help map out how we're going to actually deliver on it. And then we got the great news on the 1st of December that the federal funding was approved and that we have some financial resourcing to actually get it over the line. You'll note the paper talks about an external advisory group, and that's still being shaped up, and really learning from the conversation with the project team about what that might look like. And it might not just be one group, it might be a couple, but what we're really keen on is having some council liaison positions to help provide that link, and so that we don't get to a situation where we're catching councillors up after the fact. So we really wanting to take legal members on the journey with us right from the get-go. The work will consider community outcomes for the long-term plan, but it won't be in time for the stuff that you need to do in the interim, such as the refresh of the infrastructure strategy and the other bits and bobs. And so just to be aware of that, and so that we're creating the right expectations. And now that we've got the finances ticked off, the next step is to really work on the procurement plan and get somebody alongside to help us with it. And that's all I think to say, but have to answer any questions.
Thank you. The on the table on the list. I'll speak in a minute.
Don't get registered.
Any questions or comments for Rebecca?
Sorry. Rebecca.
I really like the idea that this would create an indicator data set for us to measure some of these things, because I think that is the biggest challenge around a lot of that wellbeing space is what does it mean and how do we measure it? So that would be really beneficial. And I'm not sure how other people feel about it, but I have spoken with Sally and suggested that given that it includes the words community vision, that perhaps Sally and I could put ourselves forward for those spots. Really? Unless you were feeling particularly strong.
No, I was going to think, now, who would the likely members be? And I thought, I think I know it.
Who were they?
Not saying now. Certainly. What a vision. To be clear.
Okay, I don't know.
Your vision, but narrow. Sorry. Any other questions, thoughts, or any other volunteers for that matter?
No, I'll move from recommendation that before it gets out of control.
You have to Stu to preempt that because we might pick on them again. Yeah, good. I think getting that funding is a big impetus to it all to move ahead. My question is, I might be on the wrong track, but is there a connection to this and back to what's being done here or going to be done here with what's happening in the newcomers type space as well? Is there a connection there?
I think we're using all of those networks to draw, because this is bigger than this is about our wider community. So that's where, and this external group that we're putting together is just sort of link into our community groups, all of those, and just try and get as good a gauge as possible of what's happening.
And I think how a community welcomes its newcomers is a key indicator of social wellbeing and cultural wellbeing.
Cool. No other questions? So recommendations A, B and C to appoint councillors Ali and Bynum to act as liaison for the external advisory group. Stu wants to move that. Someone like to second it, please? Lindley? Any more discussion? All in favour? Yes, carried. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that clears it.
There's a lunch stream or let's see if you go into that.
Paul, are you happy if we come back? You can come back and we'll just carry on. Yeah, why not? Lunch is ready, but we might as well, let you off the hook while you're here. You're going to give us, item 22.10 to 11, page 201, activity update from the Secretary of the New Zealand Trust.
First of all, I'd just like to give the apologies to the trust chair, Owen Graham. He would have very much liked to be here, but they've actually got a trust meeting today at the same time as I was, so the trust meeting as we speak. The reason why this report is in front of you today is we wanted to give you an update on how this trust is progressing, so that you knew what was happening, and given it's now a year through into the formalisation of this, that you see just catch up on where they're at and where they're wanting to head. So since they were formally established in December, the trust has come together and have been working on relationships amongst themselves, getting to know each other's institutions and understanding each other's pressure points and opportunities. A key milestone for this group was appointing a part-time coordinator. So Amanda Griffin started mid-year, and her focus has been around getting to know the museum each individual ones, and finding out some areas where we can do some sort of coordinated policy development, some sharing of resources, and some connectivity with the community. And she's also been working with the Otago Museum a lot with some training and to give some coordinated approaches to those. Amanda comes from quite a wealth of experience, and we were very lucky to get her. She shifted to Central Otago after being up in North Island and was working in the Mulcairn Museum in the Taranaki, where she was sole charge, and she was also supporting other institutions nearby. And she has a degree in visual design and a diploma in museum studies. And she's been working alongside a museum and helping out those people. She's also working like this, moving into this next year. They are going to be working closely on getting some action plans around the museum strategy to how to deliver on that. And they're working currently on an application to the Ministry of Health and Heritage Regeneration Fund, where they're trying to, they plan, they would like to get funding to identify some significant artefacts they have across the sector, so they can treat that as a coordinated sale and celebration of what they have. With the action plan that they're developing is to really push through on those strategic goals and objectives within the strategy, which was this document here that was developed last year, and that was developed by the network themselves. And the vision in that strategy is to preserve and protect and celebrate community stories and artefacts for current and future generations. That's the goal, and that's what they're working on for the next financial year.
Thank you. The rest of the museum community throughout our district are in a good space.
I go along to the meetings and I hear them feed them, so listen to what they're doing. They seem engaged and activated, and it's just really passionate about.
So having this group overarching all our museums is working out well.
I think that they're finding out this is the journey of discovery, so they're working that out amongst themselves.
Cool. Thank you. Any other questions? Someone want to move the report we received, please? Ian? Zoe? All about it? Gary? Thank you. Right, now I think we've got options. I think we'll stop for lunch now and come back at 1:15. Everything comes forward for an hour. We're not going to give the quarter an hour we've made up away, are we?
No, I've got to go. Just lunch.
Right, okay, lunch back here at 1:45. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Well run.
Thanks.